Good morning and welcome to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. If you're not a believer in unlikelihoods, keep in mind with sufficient thrust, pigs fly just fine, as Chargers fans found out Saturday night. Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
Wow. Welcome to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live, Chad, from coast to beautiful coast in the Trauma Center studios, powered by the Recovery Room. What a wild weekend of football this was. I mean, seriously, except for the game that we had pegged correctly. Like, we had this thing last week dialed in, the 49ers destroying the Seattle Seahawks, and you're $20 richer this morning.
Yes.
Games that we saw over the weekend, Chad, really defied a lot of expectations. The Jaguars coming back against the Chargers, like you just mentioned. The Giants, which we'll talk about, really upsetting the Viking fans, especially those that were up there at US Bank Stadium. You know, then you saw the Bengals barely be able to beat the Ravens. I have no idea what we're going to see tonight from Tampa Tom. I've got to tell you, based upon the script writing that we have seen through the first week of the NFL Wildcard weekend, Chad, Tom Brady's beating Dallas tonight because the script's already been written. This thing is going to happen. You realize that.
Oh, yeah. Well, we kind of already picked that anyway, didn't we? I know we called the Jaguars. I think both of us were on the Jaguars. Both of us were on the Giants.
Yep.
Obviously, the Niners was a little touch and go there in the first half. It was a little concern in the first half. I have to be honest with you. I was clinching my $20, and then the second half came around, and I can't say enough about Brock Purdy and what he has done.
Unbelievable.
I mean, what is it, 6-0 now? As a starting quarterback, Mr. Irrelevant. It's truly remarkable. Christian McCaffrey had a great game, and I feel bad for some Seahawks fans and Geno Smith specifically because I think he played his ass off and had a great year. But I think that was expected. Everybody kind of thought that was going to happen. I was a little surprised that the Bengals struggled as much as they did against the Ravens and how well the Ravens played.
Well, me too. And I guess when I say the way that the games worked out wasn't exactly how I thought, I had Buffalo, I had the 49ers, and I want to say one other team on a 3-teamer. It doesn't matter because it went kaput. But I thought the point spreads were going to be a bit different there. Okay. I really did. I thought that Buffalo would at least be able to cover a 6-point spread because I bought it down from 14. Foreman, you got to keep this shit to yourself, man. Foreman knows exactly what was happening. Yeah, I had a great weekend. It was awesome. It was a fun weekend, okay? Got a chance to rest, relax, enjoy some quality time. It was a good weekend. Thank you, Foreman. Appreciate you. I just didn't see the Buffalo Bills having that much trouble with Skylar Thompson and the Dolphins. I really didn't. That game yesterday was crazy. Everything else did work out like we thought it would from a winning and a losing perspective. But again, point spreads were important this weekend. Again, BetUS.com. Use promo code Carnival. Get yourself some free play money. It just didn't work out the way that I had hoped, but we did nail our signature bet of the week. Again, the 49ers were 9.5-point favorites, Chad. They had to lay 9.5 points to beat Seattle, and they did so. Coming up on this morning's show, we'll be talking to our green and gold insider, Joe Daguanno, at about 8:30. Joe will jump aboard the Sports Carney carousel. We'll talk to Joe and ask him this question, Chad, because I posed this for our audience members on our Facebook group page and our Twitter feed at the Sports Carney. What was worse, if you're an NFL fan, specifically a Midwest football fan, what was worse? The Packers losing Week 18 to the Lions or the Giants beating the Vikings choking it up against those New York Giants, which, again, Kirk Cousins statistically had a good game, 31 for 39, had a couple of touchdowns and no interceptions. Bro, you got to sack the fuck up, and you got to throw the ball further than 4 yards on 4th down with the game on the line. You have to. Like, this is why people don't trust Kirk Cousins. So take this morning's Sports Carnival poll question, again, at the Sports Carney on Twitter and our Facebook group page, Chad, now over 310 members strong. Let's keep this going. What about you? What's worse, the Packers lost to the Lions Week 18, not making the postseason, or the Vikings becoming division winners and losing like they did at home to the New York Giants?
Well, I think it's worse that the Vikings lost. In my opinion, when you had that season that they had an amazing season, but we both kind of suspected that to happen.
Yes.
Especially wasn't just a couple of weeks ago where they barely beat the Giants with that amazing 61-yard field goal. And I just had that feeling. And I just think, Brian Daboll is the kind of coach that's going to get guys up for specific games, especially when you're a game you're not supposed to win. It's the playoffs. It's extremely important. And I just don't have the same, confidence in the Vikings, and specifically Kirk Cousins. I don't know what it is about him. I mean, when you look at his numbers, you're like, wow, this is a great quarterback, but you have to watch him. He just does not fill you with confidence that he's going to be the guy that's going to come away with the victory every time. And all of these close games, although, they kept talking about it in the pregame, how it prepared them and all that. That's great. But that also is indicative to putting themselves in a lot of bad positions. And you don't really want to do that when you're in the playoffs. If you don't have to. I mean, it's great that if you do get in that situation, that you have experience to get out of it, but you don't want to put yourself in that situation.
No, and I think that's what the Vikings and Viking fans had been sort of wrestling with this entire season, right? And for those Viking fans, Neil Duda, Todd Vercruyze, and those that would like to chime in this morning, give us your thoughts here. But I think that's what Viking fans have been wrestling with. You win the games, and you love winning the games because a win's a win. And Joe Daguanno said this before a couple of weeks ago. There is no such thing as an ugly win. It's a W. But when you put yourself behind the 8 ball all the time, and they were, again, down by more than 10 points to the Giants, it becomes increasingly more difficult. Not that you can't win, but your chances start to precipitously fall every time you're down by 10 points. And this is where Daniel Jones, and I couldn't believe that I would actually come on this morning's program and say this as I had my notes. You look at Daniel Jones and just say, this fucking guy actually might be okay.
Yeah.
Because he ran for 78 yards, 17 carries. He
played his ass off.
He really did. He threw for over 300. He was really efficient. Again, he's not going to be ever confused, Daniel Jones, that is, with Tom Brady or Joe Montana or Aaron Rodgers. But there's something about Jones, the way that Dable's being able to use him, that I think is really great. Now, going forward, long-term, do they keep this guy for the next 5 or 10 years? It's hard to say. But for the next couple of seasons, I think Daniel Jones is going to be their guy. I really do. I can't see him finding a better replacement quarterback right now in the upcoming draft or free agency. I just can't.
Me neither. I was impressed with him. A couple weeks in a row, he's played really, really well. And obviously with a playoff game, and where you're the underdog and you play as well as he did and you get the win, you gotta tip the cap to him. He played well, and he's got a big stature. He's a big dude.
Yes, he is.
And he's pretty mobile. He's, that was a good game all the way around. If you're a Giants fan, you're very, very happy, obviously. If you're a Vikings fan, it was a tough season. When you win 13 games and you're out in the first round of the playoffs, that sucks.
Yep. Well, Packer fans know that feeling all too well. Stay tuned when we come back here on the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. We'll run down the rest of that NFL slate. We've also got some NBA basketball, Chad, coming up today. It is, of course, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which means the NBA is going to be on full display. Games are starting at noon in the Central Time Zone, 10 o'clock for you guys out west. A couple of them will be nationally televised, and LeBron James made some history last night. So stay tuned. Stick around. We'll be back in 60 seconds here on the Sports Carnival. What can I say? The Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi Street is not only my favorite bar in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin, it's my favorite restaurant in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin. Breakfast served 8 to noon, Saturday and Sundays, daily specials, incredible cocktails, and the best damn wait staff in the entire city. My buddy Matt knows how to treat you right, and that's why when you go to the Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi, you're always going to have a great time and a great meal with a great cocktail. So if you haven't been in a while, or perhaps you're just regular and you want to stop in again, make it a thing. I'm there every single week. How about you?
Coming to Fox this fall, it's the Bench Brothers.
Talking about that street clothes and Westbrook.
They're getting down on the bench.
The Bench Brothers, brought to you by
Big Dick's Hoagie Heaven. Remember, ladies, the first 6 inches is free. And by Don Francisco's. At Don Francisco's, if you're up all night, so are we.
Street clothes and Westbrook.
They're getting down on the bench.
Broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. It's not that we have an attitude problem. It's that you have a perception problem. Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
Yeah, my attitude's just fine and dandy, as a matter of fact. Loving life here. 2023 has started off with a bang, man. I'm really stoked. This is a big week. And let me tell you why. I'm moving out of my house, which I've lived in for the last 5.5, 6 years, moving into town. Really excited about that, but a big change. Tomorrow, Chad, my son, John, who you've known since he was, 6, 7 years old, is going to be 18 years old tomorrow. Can you believe that shit? I feel like I feel a little long in the tooth here this morning. I got to be honest.
I mean, you're getting old. Yes.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
When you have an 18-year-old kid, that kind of puts it in perspective, I guess, doesn't it?
Yeah, it cements the fact that you've got an legal adult child. Now, of course, as men, we don't become adults until we're 35, but you know what I'm saying. A legal adult child now at 18 years old, it's just going to be wild. So for those that are with us this morning, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and LinkedIn, welcome aboard. If you want to take part in this morning's poll question up on our Twitter feed at the Sports Carney and our Facebook group page, what was worse as NFL fans and specifically NFC North fans? The Vikings losing like they did, such a bad loss to the Giants at home yesterday, or the Packers not even making the postseason and losing to Detroit in week 18. We're getting a ton of action on our Facebook group page, Chad, right now. It's not surprising. Recency bias coming in. The Vikings choking versus the Giants, 66-34% for the Packers losing to the Lions on week 18. But jumping over to Twitter, at the Sports Carney, 71-29, saying the Packers lost to the Lions was actually worse. Listen, I think that we talked about this briefly to open. When you lose a game that you know that you are expected to win because you're the home team and you're the division leader, even though pundits like myself and yourself didn't necessarily think they would win, that's going to really hurt. And it's also, yesterday, I should say, was 5 years and a day after Case Keenum's remarkable 61-yard bomb, the Minneapolis Miracle, which was a blown coverage by the Saints. But it's 5 years and a day after that time in which Viking fans celebrated and thought, oh my God, Case Keenum could possibly take this team to a Super Bowl, which the Vikings, recall, did host that year. They didn't end up making it to the Super Bowl, but the Vikings would have been that first team ever, if they would have made it, to host a home Super Bowl. Now, Tampa Bay has done that, and they won theirs, but it's just one of those things for Kirk Cousins and Viking fans. And Chad, let's pop up that fun little Kirk Cousins slide here, because for Kirk Cousins and Viking fans, this has just got to be one of those final indicators. And I know that you mentioned the stats for Kirk Cousins. His stats are great. Like Kirk Cousins stats, you look at them on paper and you're like, dude, this guy's a great quarterback, like you've mentioned, Chad. But when you watch this guy play, he's just not good. He's just not. And I don't care if you're 31 for 39 and you've got a good QBR. Dude, it's fourth down. You've got to score. Why are you going short to TJ Hawkinson? Dude, Dan Orlovsky would have bombed that thing into the end zone. At least take a shot. There's just something about Cousins that feels very much like, if he was an accountant, he is like the most risk-adverse accountant that there has ever been. Like, he just doesn't have big game James potential, to borrow from our friend James Worthy when we were younger. There's just something about Cousins that's missing. And Chad, I got to be honest, if you're the Vikings and you're Kevin O'Connell, you put together this kind of season, and sure, Cousins is a part of the success, but do you have to decide at some point to move on? Because what do you do going forward with this cat? He won't make the big plays when they matter. He'll never get you over the hump. What do? He does make a ton of money. He is statistically pretty good. This is a tough spot to be in if you're the Vikings, I feel.
Yeah, it's difficult, especially when you have numbers like that, because it's hard to argue. You win 13 games. He puts up great individual numbers. Everything on paper looks great. It's like, how do you justify it? But it is something about, we talk about it all the time. There's certain players that are box score friendly, but when you really watch the games, whether it's basketball or football, they don't do it when it counts. And then there's other guys that maybe not as box score friendly, but when it counts or when you need it, they get it done. Those are the plays that need to happen. It doesn't necessarily have to be scoring plays. It can be, all of the intangible things that they do. And he just seems like one of those guys it's not, I don't think he's doing it intentionally. I'm not saying he's one of those guys. He's not James Harden here. Okay.
Oh, God, no.
I think he puts forth the effort, and he just doesn't have that it gene, whatever that is. I don't know what that is, but certain guys have it. He just doesn't seem to have it. But how do you move on from that? How do you justify that? That's a tough thing. I don't know.
It's one of those, Chad, it's one of those situations where you sort of look at it and from an organizational perspective, you scratch your head, because you see that the stadium's full. The fan base interest is really high. You've got some of the great skill position players. By the way, TJ Hawkinson last night, what a monster. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings getting him from Detroit, huge. Absolutely a coup. Okay, this guy is great. He'll be one of the top 5 tight ends for the league in the next half decade. The skill positions are fine. The defense for Minnesota obviously needs work, right? There needs to obviously be something else. Defense, Patrick Peterson is way past his prime in the secondary. Zadarius Smith was a Pro Bowler this year, but my point being, they've got to fix something. If you're the organization, you're looking at this and you're really asking yourself, well, what now? because the backup is not going to be the answer, right? I don't even remember who it was. Trevor Siemian or somebody was the backup. It doesn't matter. The backup's not the answer. Kirk Cousins, I don't know exactly what his salary structure is, but I do know that his cap hit next year, and Kyle Morningwood sent over a group text. I believe Joe and I were on this yesterday. I was getting a bunch of different Packer group texts. His cap hit next year is 36.2. Aaron Rodgers is 31 point something. So the cap hit for Kirk Cousins is really high. And where there will be a couple of guys on the market, Derek Carr is going to be out, right? He's gone from Las Vegas. So he'll be on the market. There's going to be a couple of guys, but is Derek Carr that big of an upgrade over Kirk Cousins? Probably not. This is a real tough spot. And like Kyle Morningwood said when answering this morning's poll question, again, at the Sports Carney on Twitter and our Facebook group page, the Vikings loss, Morningwood said, is way worse. To Viking fans, this was their year. Hell, Green Bay fans knew the Packers sucked all season long. That's fair. That is fair because the Vikings fans, and we're not trying to rub salt in it just to make fun of it for making fun of its sake, but this was one of those years you looked at and you said, well, shit, we got this thing. We're winning the division. We've beaten the Packers at home. We've got this thing. And then to lose like you did, boy, that's got to feel real hollow. When you see Trevor Lawrence throw 4 picks in the first half and come back and win a game, and Kirk Cousins won't throw the ball past the first down sticks with the game on the line, you just kind of say, shit, what do we do now?
Yeah, that's it. You know what? That's a good point. Yeah, that was an unbelievable first half that Lawrence had. And most quarterbacks would be down in the dumps and be like, that's it. You maybe get pulled from the game. You just wrap it up. The season's over with. Go surfing or whatever that guy does.
Right.
And he strapped it up and ended up getting them back in the football game, and they end up winning that. I don't know if it's that he's too, and our Facebook user is saying lack of defense was the Vikings' problem, which you can't disagree with. But there is a couple of moments there with Kirk Cousins where you're just like, give me a little bit more. I know it seems like you're asking a lot, especially when, again, you look at the numbers and all that. There's just those certain things, those certain moments in the game that you need your quarterback to step up and do, things that other guys can't do. And he's just not able to do it. And I had that feeling all season long.
And it's one of those things that Viking fans, and I know quite a few of them, Tony, a guy that's pretty familiar to a lot of our audience members here, who works at one of the local radio shops here, is a huge Vikings fan. I mean, like, he actually got, I think, like Viking Fan of the Year, which is generally reserved for people under 13. But he actually won this because he dresses up in costuming, and it's pretty impressive. The point being, I've heard these Viking fans go on and on and on with their defense.
Pathetic, impressive, same thing, I guess. Kind of.
Well, I didn't want to be the guy to say that, but yeah, basically. Anyhow, when you look at Cousins and the Viking fans have had to basically sort of defend this guy on a statistical basis, it becomes the work of a mental gymnast to be able to fit in his stats and overall play in certain cases to the lack of a whole and a total success, right? That's where it really becomes hard to put together the two because, man, he looks great at noon. He looks great when he's, playing a bad team. You put him in a primetime spot or when you need to win the game, and he's just not there. Jason P1 Breacher says he's not going to lie. He's just as tickled. The Vikings took a shit right on the field. I can totally agree. Packer fans yesterday, I think, were joyous in that the Vikings were not able to do anything because if Green Bay doesn't win, whatever. But if Minnesota loses, that
even better
in some cases is even better. So for Viking fans, look, I feel for you because this was a season in which you won so many close games. You could almost feel the story, the narrative, as Chad likes to talk about, working in your direction. But at the same time, you and I both talked about this. John Papadopoulos, ESPN 105.5, was on the show with us last week on Friday. I think we all just looked at this Viking team versus a team in the Giants who at 9-7-1 have a potential coach of the year candidate in Brian Daboll. And we just looked at this team and said, just don't believe in them. And that's where I'm at tonight with the Cowboy game, okay? Because I want to go to something here as well. Marengo Mike checked in with us from Illinois. Mike, top of the morning to you. And he says, guys, I'm off work today due to MLK. Yep. And we'll talk about the NBA slate of games, which is coming up too, because this is going to be fun. But we've got that Monday night game, Tampa Bay versus the Cowboys. He's like, what's your take on the game from a betting perspective? Here it is. Right now, the Bucs are 2.5-point dogs. I'm trying to go here to the absolute most current live odds on betus.com. Again, sign up, use the promo code Carnival, and get 125% free money. Free money. The Bucs are 2.5-point dogs right now. The total is sitting at 45.5. I like Tampa Bay here. I know that Dallas is a better team on paper. I know that Tampa Bay can't score in many cases during the course of the season. I just don't trust Mike McCarthy. I don't trust Dak Prescott. And Dak Prescott, a normally efficient quarterback, guys and gals, has really slipped into one of the least efficient quarterbacks over the last 6 weeks of the season, tied with Davis Mills for interceptions since I want to say about week 9 or week 10. I don't know what else I can say other than your accuracy when calling out the scripting of this NFL season has been pretty on point. This is going to be a Tampa Tom game, guys, and a 2.5-point home dog for a guy that doesn't lose in the first round and has never lost to the Cowboys. Mike, I got to tell you, I'm going to lay $5 on Tampa tonight. I'm going to.
Yeah, I'm torn in this game because I don't like Cowboys. I never have been a Cowboy fan. I'm a 49er fan. I hate the Cowboys. The Cowboys are the Yankees of the NFL, so I hate them. But I hate Tom Brady. I'm sick of seeing him even more. So it's tough. But when you look at historical numbers, unfortunately, I think Tom Brady is 7-0 against the Cowboys in the playoffs.
Yes,
something along those lines.
7-0 career. Yeah.
It's Tom Brady. It's interesting you mentioned scripting. I don't know if you watched the end of the game with the Jaguars, but Trevor Lawrence actually said, you couldn't script this any better or something along those lines. And I'm just like, I hope everybody that listens to us is watching. And I told you guys to start paying attention to some of these things. Now, again, it's on your radar, right? It's like buying that vehicle that you never saw before and now you see it everywhere. But anyway, I'm hoping for a good game. All of the games, with the exception possibly of the second half of the 49ers game, they were all great games. They were all close games.
They were.
Competitive, and it was entertaining to watch. And so I would hope tonight's similar, but I'm pulling for the Cowboys. I hate to say that out loud. I don't want to admit it. I'm pulling for the Cowboys, but I have a feeling they're going to lose.
Yeah, I would love to see Tom Brady just get this thing over with, right? Like pack it in, pack it up. I first of all don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to stay until literally he becomes DeMar Hamlin, but 2.0.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Sorry if that's too soon for anybody, but that's the way that I feel Brady's going to have to go out. Dallas, though, to me, with Mike McCarthy as their head coach, is just so untrustworthy. They can beat the heck out of the Vikings, but they're going to lose to the Packers. They can beat the heck out of somebody else, but they'll play close with Houston, and then they lose to Washington in a game that meant nothing for Washington except for a rivalry. The Cowboys, to me, are just a little untrustworthy. However, from a betting perspective, I mean, this is as close to a pick 'em as you can be, right?
So
because
points.
That's where you put the points. And if you want to take a look at that total, as I've mentioned, 45.5 is the total on this one. Go to betus.com and enter promo code Carnival. Get yourself that free play money. I know that Jimmy Haggerty, was checking in and said he has pretty much a lot of empathy right now for Viking fans because of the way things have gone. Normally, Packer fans, he said, would chirp. Well, I was out and about yesterday, and Packer fans were chirping. I mean, loud and proud. They were so happy to see Kirk Cousins not be able to do something that, let's be fair, the Packers haven't been able to do for a while either, but that's win substantial playoff games, playoff football games. But either way, I think Packer fans this morning, if you're looking at this from just a purely selfish perspective, you can probably take away some glee for the fact that the Vikings lost again, 66-34. Vikings choking versus the Giants versus the Packers losing to the Lions in week 18 on our Facebook group page, our Twitter feed at the Sports Carney. 71-29 is still in favor of the Packers losing to the Lions. So depending on where you're at, you're getting a bit of a different feel here.
Both of them similar games though, right? Both. You had the home field advantage.
Yep.
It was a game that you were supposed to win, that you needed to win, and you didn't win. So very similar, really, when you look at it side by side, right? Unfortunately for the Vikings, it was a playoff game. For the Packers, it was trying to get into the playoffs. Either way, there was a lot on the line. You had home field advantage. In the NFL, if you have home field advantage and you're the better team, you're supposed to win. And when you don't win, there's going to be question marks. And somebody's going to have to pay the price. Now, who that is, I don't know. But there's going to have to be some things that are going to be done with the Vikings, I would imagine, after that. Not to be overreactive, but I would imagine there's going to be some question marks and some discussions this morning and this week on how they move forward and what is that missing piece. Maybe it's another rusher. Maybe they need somebody on the defensive line that they don't currently have. And make some changes on defense. I don't think they're going to make a move with Kirk Cousins, but this definitely makes you question him as a fan moving forward. I don't know about the coaching staff. I'm sure they're going to come out and say that, it wasn't his fault, and he had a great game, and he had a great season. But we know better.
Yeah, well, when Daniel Jones is being lauded by the Giants as an elite quarterback, and this morning, Viking fans are wondering what happened to this season in which they finally got to be the NFC North champions. Yeah, there's going to be some question marks, but to your point, I largely agree. The Vikings are going to stay with Kirk Cousins because that's just a function of how this is going to work, right? The offense is going to be fine because Kyle Morningwood was mentioning the weapons, Cook, Jefferson, Thielen, Hawkinson. Yeah, they can't get it done there.
Impressive. Yeah.
The defense needs to step up, and that's what Rick Hamilton was mentioning on our Facebook group page. Gino's checking in and said, the Dogs were 4-1 this weekend with 2 winning outright. Yes, they were. The Dogs were barking, and if you didn't watch any football, we mentioned San Francisco beating the heck out of Seattle 41-23. Buffalo beat Miami, but did not cover the spread. The Bills were like 14-point favorites prior to kickoff, 13.5 in some shops. They barely get that victory, 34-31. Skylar Thompson played an incredible football game. This kid impressed the shit out of me yesterday. The Giants over the Vikings, of course, we're talking about that 31-24. The Giants were actually dogs by about 3 points. And the Bengals, they did get a cover. I want to say that the total on that one was somewhere around 6 before tip-off against Baltimore, 24-17. But Tyler Huntley played a really impressive game as well.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with the Ravens. And if it wasn't for the fact that he tries, Huntley that is, to go over the goal line, the ball, it's somehow, some way, shape, or form pops out without breaking the plane, which he thought was a little suspect. And the Bengals running that thing back, I can't remember the big guy's name, but that hustled that ball in for a touchdown. We could be looking at the Ravens advancing to play the Buffalo Bills. That would have meant, to me, that probably would have been the most surprising game. But Miami and Buffalo, Chad, that one ranked right up there too. I could not really believe poorly Josh Allen was playing and how well Skylar Thompson was playing, because Josh Allen's offensive line, if that's how they're going to play against the Bengals, they're done. I mean, the Bengals are going to kill those guys.
Skylar Thompson, almost Mr. Irrelevant. He was the second to last pick in the draft, right behind Brock Purdy. Think about all of the backup quarterbacks that are playing. I mean, been playing really, really well. Not all of them got a win. Huntley didn't get a win, and neither did Thompson, but they both played really, really well. Skylar Thompson, third-string quarterback. Brock Purdy, third-string quarterback. I mean, when you look at it's impressive how this league is put together and how entertaining it still can be when you don't even have your prime guys that are lining up in your prime position, and you're still able to put together these great, games and these great performances. So, again, the NFL is extremely, extremely strong when it comes to that and putting together a good product. And that comes down to good script writers as well.
Okay. Well, listen, we're about to
I had to get it in there.
We're about to celebrate 100 years of Disney, so I wouldn't put this completely off of the table. We'll end this little segment with a final salvo from P12 Foreman, a.k.a. Foreman's Funhouse. He says, T-Law, a.k.a. Football Jesus, would never have found it up and call it a game. I don't know what found it up. Maybe he means just, wind it up and call it a game. He has that, quote, it factor, Foreman says, that Kirk Cousins doesn't have, unfortunately. And I feel that is about as salient and as kind of a point that you can make about Kirk Cousins versus Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence looked as bad as any quarterback's ever looked in the first half of that game against the Chargers, down 27-0 through 4 picks. Second half comes out, throws 4 touchdowns, and they win by a point.
If you painted Trevor Lawrence blue, would he not fit right into Avatar? Does that dude not look like a guy from Avatar?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, my son John and his friends went to see on Friday night. Apparently, it was awesome.
Oh, I would imagine. Yeah, the first one was good. If you like,
it was
blue dudes running around half naked, I guess you're into it. Yeah,
it was very good. No social commentary in Avatar either. Like that was
not at all. No.
If you thought you were seeing that, you were not. It was just your imagination. All right. When we come back here on the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center Studios, powered by the Recovery Room, we'll be talking to our good buddy, the Green and Gold Insider, Mad Dog of Madison, and International Male Model of the Year, 1998, Joe Daguanno. Stay tuned. Now more than ever, if you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps an investment property, you need a full-time dedicated real estate agent who is up to date on all the latest trends and analysis and is ready to give you the kind of service that you deserve. That's why the official real estate agent and the official real estate partner of the Sports Carnival is Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate. Whether you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps you are a seasoned investor, Call the official real estate agent partner of the Sports Carnival, Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate. The official mortgage team of the Sports Carnival is the Midwest mortgage team of Land Home Financial, my good buddies Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi. Listen, we all know the mortgage industry is in a bit of an upheaval right now, and that's why it's more important than ever to go to a couple of guys that you can trust, a local operation right here in La Crosse. That is the Midwest mortgage team. Again, Michael Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi of Land Home Financial. Don't make a mistake with your mortgage needs. Go to the official mortgage provider of the Sports Carnival, the Midwest mortgage team, Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi.
Back to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. Just a reminder, good girls are bad girls that never get caught. That's right. Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
Yeah, I'll tell you all about that. All about that. Mad Dog of Madison, Joe Daguanno, Green and Gold Insider, International Male Model of the Year, 1998. Joining us here this morning, Chad, on the Sports Carnival Carousel.
98? Really?
Yeah, it was 1998. Joe's transitioned into more of a mature acting role now. I don't know if you knew this, but Chad, Joe Daguanno is actually a pretty good actor and gets himself involved in some different projects. I can't wait to see one of these coming up soon. You know, Joe, now that we're on like a video platform as opposed to just an audio platform, we could actually show some of those clips as you guys are making them on the program. And I think it would actually be something that our audience members would really like, because you do a good job in that stuff.
Well, I appreciate it, man. But you know, here's what they said about me as an actor. He never throws for a 2-yard pass when it's 14.
Right.
So, you know, not sure about if that means that I'm a good actor or a bad actor or whatever the case may be, but he'll always at least throw to the sticks.
Yeah,
is what they used to say about me back in the day. So yeah, you know, it's interesting. Some of those film and video projects, I'm just fortunate that some of the ones from like the 80s aren't public domain. As I was a struggling actor, I'm kind of hoping those don't pop back up and bite me in the ass. And so, you know, just we'll keep it with the clean ones moving forward.
Yeah, some things don't age as well, especially now. And Chad, you and I have talked about this forever. I mean, when we used to go,
I'm guilty of a lot of those things. Yes.
Well, I think we used to have in our office a little sliding scale of appropriateness. So we would look at it and sort of chart it, right? It's like an astrological chart. You're like, oh, nope, that's no longer appropriate. Put that one away, Sagittarius. Listen, Joe, you mentioned Kirk fucking Cousins and his inability to throw the ball. Let's just jump right into it, because Packer fans this morning, and that's why I've got the poll question up on our Twitter feed and our Facebook group page, are actually having some fun with the fact that while the Packers didn't make the postseason, at least they didn't choke job it up in the first round of the playoffs, a home playoff game versus a team in the New York Giants, which, listen, are having a great season, but have not been considered to be world beaters, if we can be fair. What was worse? And then why did Kirk Cousins really just have such an issue there at the end of the game, considering he had such great stats throughout most of it? At the end of the game, just not able to really come up with it.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, and you guys know this line that I've used before. Statistics are like bikinis, because what they reveal is vital, but what they reveal is suggestive, but what they conceal is vital. And when you look at Cousins' stats, you're saying that's a top tier NFL quarterback,
right?
But when you look at the decision making, and it's really interesting, if you listen to the presser last night, you know, Kevin O'Connell did a really nice job of deflecting off of Cousins at first, and he said, no, that's on me. You know, I've got to make sure. And then as the presser's going on, you could almost hear the disbelief in O'Connell's voice that Cousins did that, because he said, you know, maybe I needed to be more direct and tell him, you know, you need to throw the ball here. And so it was one of those things where, and again, I think O'Connell's a good coach, and I think you saw a lot of these first-time playoff coaches make some big-time blunders and gaffes over the weekend. And I think that's telling, whether it's a quarterback or a coach or a quarterback-coach combination. You just saw a lot of those types of things where I think the playoffs are a different ballgame. And look, we've seen it as Packer fans Matt LaFleur has not handled the playoffs well over the last several years. And there is something to be said about learning how to win. And so, yeah, I don't know what's worse. I guess I will always say this. I would rather make the playoffs and lose than be stuck at home. I will just always say this. And I go back to the Packers Super Bowl run of 2010, 2011. And, of course, they made a magical run to even get in that year. And then they go on the run to win the Super Bowl. So I'd rather still – I know Packer fans were kind of, they were justifying where they were this year. And really, I'd rather be in the playoffs. I even the heartbreaking losses from a Packer fan standpoint, I'd rather be in the playoffs because you just don't know what can happen because Green Bay essentially, we've talked about this, good enough to be competitive and make a run at the end of the season. Now you're stuck at pick 15. Yeah. So you really didn't shit the bed. So you got a top 10 pick and you weren't good enough to get a 20-30 pick. So, you're in that no man's land, but I tell you that Giants team and Brian Daboll, I tip my hat to him. And he is one of those coaches. We talked about it with Dan Campbell with the Lions. He's one of those coaches that you just want to fucking play for. And I tip my, and Jones has made himself a shit ton of money this offseason.
Yeah.
He is in a perfect position. Talk about, being in the catbird seat. This guy, he's got it fucking made, and I applaud him. And you just look at how that team came together. And as I'm watching that game yesterday, and you look at the fourth quarter, Justin Jefferson, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't even targeted in the fourth quarter. And you kind of look at what they were doing on that offensive side of the ball and what the Giants were doing, and it just seemed that was a brilliant coaching effort by Brian Daboll. And again, it was just some really good football this weekend. And you look at the Dolphin and Bills game, and you look at Trevor Lawrence and what he did, and just some really good football being played. Looking forward to tonight's game and, of course, next weekend. But, yeah, I'd rather always lose in the playoffs than be kicked out of the playoffs the last regular season game of the year.
So let me just ask this next because you mentioned Kevin O'Connell, coach of the Vikings, kind of deflecting from Cousins initially and then being more specific. What about Cousins do you think it is, Joe, that keeps him from making big plays when the big plays need to be made? Because this is where I think, we look at a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence. We look at a quarterback like Joe Burrow. We look at a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers in cases, and we say, well, those are quarterbacks that are going to go out and get you a play, right? And to be a certain kind of quarterback, making a certain kind of money, which Cousins is in that category, you have to be able to overcome things. That's why they're paying you big money. If you were just an average quarterback, then you're not getting paid that big money. So what about Cousins do you think it is that keeps him from being able to make the plays when the plays need to be made, Joe?
Look, he's 1-4 in the playoffs right now, Kirk Cousins. And this is where, again, you look at the stats and you look at a regular season quarterback who just can't make plays in the playoffs. And again, don't get me wrong. I think Rodgers 2010 through 15 was making those plays because regardless of anything, I don't put that Seattle loss on Aaron Rodgers in that NFC Championship game. So from 2010 to 2015, I think Rodgers was also one of those quarterbacks that can make plays in the playoffs. I go back to the 2009 playoffs. Kurt Warner versus Aaron Rodgers, Cardinals, Packers. That was just a brilliant performance by Rodgers to bring them back in that game. So now you look at Rodgers today, not so much. I just think Kirk Cousins, you throw him with a lot of quarterbacks. You throw him in that group of quarterbacks that, continually put up good stats, continually give your team hope that you can actually be a Super Bowl contender, but then eventually let your team down when you got to play in the clutch. Whether it be Washington or Minnesota, we know who Kirk Cousins is. He is a good NFL quarterback, not having the ability to elevate his team to the next level. And we talked about the Vikings after the Packer-Viking game this year, the second one. When you have a 13-win Viking team with a negative point differential, that tells you they are not a great football team. They beat up on the NFC North. And so again, in the NFC North, Lions, great story. Packers, kind of coming through the end of the year, pretty good story. But overall, the NFC North underperforming. And so it's just one of those things where you look at this team and there are a lot of holes and a lot of question marks. And so, where do the Vikings go from here? Where does the NFC North go from here? I think the Lions right now on January 16th are the prohibitive favorites, in my opinion, to win the North next year. And so, wow. We all see quarterbacks like Cousins, getting back to that point, who really put up some good stats and can sling the ball. But when the game is on the line, you just can't count on. And again, I was watching that, and you almost could script this thing out. And then when I saw him throw for 4th and 2, and his thing, I get it. He was getting rushed, and he can't take a sack, and he's going to put the ball in play. That was his rationale for throwing it on 4th and 2. But honestly, I'd rather have Aaron Rodgers on that one, slinging it downfield, at least past the sticks.
Yeah.
And so, throw one up for a jump ball and let somebody try to make a play at that point, because I shook my head. I'm like, did he know it was 4th down? Did he know it was 4th and 8? What was that play all about? And again, the more you watch that presser, and I recommend go back to that presser to anyone who's watching today and listening, because you could just see O'Connell. It's almost like he's talking himself through it, and he's like going through therapy over the presser. and you almost heard at the end, it's like, yeah, why the fuck did he throw that? It was this natural progression to like, well, that's on me. I got to call better play, to what a dumbass. And so, it was just a real funny transition that he went through as he was processing what happened.
I love this, because there is going to be around the NFL this morning and throughout the next couple of weeks, a lot of different questions from a lot of different teams about what they do with their quarterback or their coaches going forward. And, Kevin O'Connell just signed with the Vikings. He's fine, and they had a really good season. He's going to be good. But there was another quarterback that, much like Kirk Cousins, puts up great stats. I don't know if he's going to be a big game winner yet, because we haven't been able to see. That's Justin Herbert. P12 Foreman's checking in and asking this. I don't think he deserves to get fired. He's starting off with a supposition, but what's your thoughts on the Bolts getting rid of Brandon Staley and trading for Sean Payton, who we all know wants to stay in LA? So I follow a lot of the LA news media still, because I'm out west since I was a little kid, and I've been hearing this very same thing. So Payton's working right now for Fox Sports, okay? And he's a regular contributor on shows like the Colin Cowherd Show, as well as others, and doing some studio work. He does want to stay in LA. Joe, if I'm the Chargers, after what I saw on this weekend in the first, super wild card weekend game, if I'm the Chargers and Sean Payton tells me I will come to your team, whatever the trade is with New Orleans, I don't know how much they would have to give. I would really seriously look at making that switch, because Brandon Staley's a defensive oriented coach. We're starting to see fewer and fewer of those guys really become successful NFL head coaches. We're really starting to see the offensive side of the football take that sort of position over. Would you consider making a move, even though the Chargers made the postseason? If Sean Payton was available and willing to come to your team, would you take that move?
Well, yeah. And by the way, the funniest tweet I saw last night. What was that?
I don't know.
Right. Funniest thing I saw last night was, hang on a second, guys.
Uh-oh. Is it important?
No, I don't think it's important. I just can't figure out. There we go. Sorry about that.
You're
all
fine.
right. So funniest tweet I saw last night was tens of Chargers fan riot in LA.
Right.
After the game. I thought that was great. Look, Staley, it's not just this game. When you look at the job he's doing, look at how he handled game 18 with Mike Williams.
That's a good point.
And look at his track record now over the last couple of years. And I don't want to say meteoric rise, but yeah, you go from coaching small college to being a linebacker coach to being the DC, and now you're the head coach. And I look at the total book of work, and when you got the players that the Chargers had, to me it's obvious that is a coaching problem that they have there. And yeah, Sean Payton would fix it. I think it's going to come down to the Chargers and the Broncos as far as Sean Payton. And I really think he is going to end up coaching one of those football teams. And And if I look at the talent that you surrounded and that you've built with the Chargers, I truly think, you guys, that is a coaching problem. And I don't look at just this game. I look at everything about him. And it goes back to, his dumb decisions last year to go for fourth down in his own territory a couple of times. And like I said, the Mike Williams handling in game 18 this year, or week 18 this year, to this meltdown against the Jaguars. I say, yeah, you only have a window so big. And if you've got a quarterback like Herbert and you can say, look, we got to make the move now, you can't fuck around with that. And we all know the window closes so quick in the NFL that problem, from an outsider's point of view, looking at that situation, that's 100% a coaching issue.
And I think that's where we'll leave you, Joe, because I think all of us agree that Justin Herbert's one of those transformational type quarterbacks, but he will need coaching like Sean Payton to get him there. And the Chargers have to get whatever they can from this rookie contract out of it while they still have that opportunity, because you mentioned those windows closing. Here's the reality of the situation. And we'll talk about a Rodgers contract when we come back. A quarterback that makes over 18% of his team's total salary on a salary cap basis has never won a Super Bowl except for Peyton Manning. That's the only time that's ever happened.
Yeah, real quick on the Rodgers thing, guys. Andrew Brandt, in his Sunday article that I subscribe to, who I'm a big fan of, he said, don't be surprised if Rodgers just steps away.
Oh, Jesus.
He said, which threw me for a curveball. He said, Rodgers is a different cat. He said he's much more capable of stepping away from the game than Brett Favre was. He said his thought is, don't be surprised if Rodgers calls it.
Wow. Okay, well, way to leave us with that bombshell here. Thanks, Joe, and thanks, Andrew Brett. No, I love it because, listen, that gives us more fodder when we come back here on the Sports Carnival. And, Joe, appreciate you as always. We'll talk a little bit more Rodgers contract. Chad, you and I will kind of break down the slate of NBA games as well today. Again, Martin Luther King Jr. Day sees NBA tip-off at noon. Joe, we'll talk to you real soon, brother. Thank you so much as always.
See you, boys.
Preferred Insurance is the official auto, home, business, flood, and life insurance agency of the Sports Carnival, serving folks in La Crosse and surrounding areas with licenses in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. As an independent insurance agency, Preferred Insurance is free to find the very best insurance for you, your family, or your business needs. Call my friends at Preferred Insurance today and set up a free consultation. Remember, working with an independent agency means Preferred Insurance works for you, with you, to find the best solutions at the best prices.
Coming to the Discovery Channel this fall, Living with a Confederate.
Hi, my name is Travis Tay. A lot of folks around here call me Tay-Tay. Yeah, I share a house with my second cousin. Name's Chandler. He's what some folks around here call eccentric.
Why, hello there. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Chandler Worthington III, and I must admit, them Northerners, they get under my skin, make me hot under the collar, with all that Northern aggression and everything. I always say, you boys just keep your Yankee doodles out of my sweet potato pie. At least for now, anyway. That's my little joke. I mean, stars and bars may fill my heart, but hopefully, a chiseled chin and a barreled chest fills my loins.
See what I'm saying? I got to deal with that 24/7.
I'm getting the vapors just thinking about them Northerners coming down here on their big old steeds.
Confederate.
Yeah.
Back to the action live from the Trauma Center studios. This is the one and only Sports Carnival. I like this Ben Franklin quote. Well done is better than well said. Well said. Huh? Yeah. Here's your host, Dave Carney.
I like medium well myself, if I were to be specific about that. But Ben Franklin, great guy, smart dude too, right? Really smart dude. Guys and gals,
except for all the dead children underneath his house. Other than that, he was a pretty solid guy.
Yeah, there was that. Why you got to bring up old shit?
Sorry.
There was that. To our fantastic supporters here of the Sports Carnival, the Recovery Room, where we broadcast from the Trauma Center studios, BetUS, where you claim 125% free play money. Enter the promo code Carnival. Kyle Cable and One Trust Real Estate, the official real estate partner of the show, sold my house in 2 days. Preferred Insurance, Tony and Brian, Going to be buying a new agency here too. Got you covered for auto, for business, for flood, for home, and of course the Midwest Mortgage Team. Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi, guys and gals, thank you so much. Now, our other good friends, Sean O'Neill, the O'Neill Law Firm, and Joe's Helping Hands Landscaping, also here to tell you that if you need some help and it's in the legal field, call our friend Sean, family in bankruptcy mostly. And if you need some snow removal or yard care, Joe's Helping Hands Landscaping is there for you. Look, the Packers situation here with Rodgers in this contract, I was just reading over the break when we were gone, the article that Joe was mentioning, Andrew Brandt, former vice president of the Green Bay Packers, was pointing out that, and I'm going to just read this quote, Aaron and the Packers had to contemplate him walking away a year ago. And he told this to a magazine called The Heavy. Brandt goes on to say, the bottom line is, and this is like stealing directly from Joe, the bottom line is $40 million in dead cap money was certainly outrageous years ago. Brandt goes on to saying, having managed their cap for 10 years, especially for the Packers, but things are different now. So Andrew Brandt goes on to say this and points out that Carson Wentz cost the Eagles $34 million when Philly decided to move on from him. The Falcons ate $45 million or $40.5 million when they dealt Matt Ryan to the Indianapolis Colts. They ate that. And so Brandt goes on to say, quote, there's a chance the Packers have budgeted for Rodgers' retirement or trade. Listen, I'm of this opinion, and I talked to a couple of folks this weekend when I was out and about watching the football games. I want Rodgers back in Green Bay if for no other reason, earn that fucking money. Because if you're going to put the Packers in that kind of situation where, you're going to not let them play the guy that needs to come up from behind you because you're still statistically in it, even though I think we all knew the Packers probably weren't making the postseason. If you're not going to let that kid play, you wanted to take the money, guarantee yourself this contract. Don't be an asshole about it. Don't be an asshole about it. Come back and take the money because you talked about Larry Bird. We hadn't mentioned him yet today, but we'll get back to it.
You mentioned him this time, not me.
All right. Well, he makes his way onto the show. Larry Bird did not take a $4 million roster bonus that the Boston Celtics were going to give him because he knew he couldn't play. And Larry Bird could have taken that. It was his money to take if he wanted to.
Yep.
But he said no. Tom Brady, for all the shit that we talk about Tom and wanting him to go away, he and Tim Duncan famously took less and less through the years so they could get a better team around him. And Aaron Rodgers wanted the bag. Okay, fine. It's a business decision. I get it. You need to get your money. Get it while you can. Blah, 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 blah. But quarterback Aaron Rodgers isn't the same as DeMar Hamlin, who's making rookie scale minimum money of $175,000. This guy's got generational wealth, and he talks about that well beyond what he'd ever be able to spend. And his investments and his advisors have probably put him into a position, Chad, where he'll see $1 billion in his total lifetime come to him, right? This fucking guy needs to come back and play another season for the Packers, because if you're going to be like that, I'm going to tell you what, Brett Favre, as much as Packer fans didn't like him going to the Vikings or the Jets, this dude would have egg on his face forever in the state of Wisconsin, in my estimation, because you're going to have a hard sell with regular Wisconsin people that get up in the morning, get their fucking lunch pail, go to work. And I don't care if you're a professional or a blue collar person. That's the mentality here. It's a lot like Washington. People get up in the morning, they go to work, they do their job. They don't bitch about it, and they come home and they live their lives. Rodgers wants to tell you all the things that you're doing wrong, all the things he's doing right. And if he leaves you high and dry, man, oh man, I just don't know how welcome it will feel for him. Now, eventually, of course, people will forget about that and remember the fact that he was a great quarterback and won a Super Bowl. But in the intermediate time, 5-10 years, I think his name would be like mud. I really do.
Yeah, Mike Byers, who checked in earlier, I believe it's his birthday he mentioned.
Yeah, happy birthday, Mike. Yes.
He's asking, when do Rodgers and other players decide on their contracts? And I guess that depends on when their contracts are up. But generally, it's in the offseason, right? Generally, it's between now and
March. So the league new year starts in March. And in March, you have to have contracts that are guaranteed signed. You have to do a number of things. That's when, we start talking about franchise tags and those types of things. That's essentially it. But Mike, Rodgers doesn't have to decide on a contract. He already signed a contract. If Rodgers walks away, that's his decision. The Packers, they're not holding the gun to his head and saying that you have to play football here, but he doesn't have to decide on a contract. If he comes back, which I think he should, I'm not saying he will, but I think he should, then he's just going to play off what he's got. I find it to be really, really, really counter to the Packers fan base, counter to the Packers like idiom. If Rodgers said, I want you to give me all of this money guaranteed, which cost the team essentially Devontae Adams, because they wouldn't guarantee Devontae the same money that he was getting from the Raiders, right? If you cost the team a player and you're going to bail out without letting them take a serious look at Jordan Love because we're still statistically in it, you're an asshole. I mean, like, that's just what it is. You're just an asshole.
It's just going to make the organization look really, really bad. If that's the way it plays out, it's going to make them look bad. Having to eat, how much do they have to eat? 34 million or 40 million?
It would be about they'd eat about 60. I mean, about 40 to 60 now, right? Because there's a dead cap, but they could push some of that off into the other years.
Okay, but I mean, the bottom line is
40 million they'd have to eat right away.
And they lost. And because of that, they made a sacrifice, right? They made a decision. We're not going to stick with Davante Adams. We're not going to pay him his money, which they could have done, but instead they gave it to Rodgers. Am I correct in that?
Because Davante's salary by base year was going to be about the same as the Raiders, but not as much guaranteed because they had to give the guaranteed money to Rodgers.
That's just going to look bad if Rodgers walks away and he says, no, F you, which, again, I agree with that article. He's definitely a different kind of dude. And he's kind of a contrarian to a certain degree. And so if everybody thinks he should do A, he's going to do B just to do B. You know what I mean? He seems like that type of guy. That's going to put the organization in a terrible situation with fans because they're going to be like, man, we gave up Davante Adams for this asshole and he walked. I mean, obviously, the onus of that, the most of that's going to go on Rodgers, right? Most of the ire is going to be directed to Rodgers, but it's not going to make the organization look any better.
No, it's not. And if you're Brian Gutekunst, who is a University of Wisconsin lacrosse grad, if you're Milt Hendrickson, again, that's got a lot of ties here. And if you're Mark Murphy and company, this is going to wear on you really poorly because, again, you look at the sacrifices the team has made to ensure Aaron's delicate ego and all of his potential awesomeness would remain intact. It's not going to look great. Here's something that I just found as well. John Kuhn, who is a Packer favorite, former fullback, does a lot with the Packer broadcast, at least in the state of Wisconsin, said this: if in fact Rodgers had played his final game, and this is on that article that I referenced from The Heavy, and go to heavy.com if you want to see this one. Kuhn says, quote, Aaron will go down as one of the best quarterbacks the NFL has ever seen. However, he'll undoubtedly be linked to many season failures after breaking through in 2010. Kuhn goes on to say, depending on the eye of the beholder, Chad, there will always be a debate, of whether the teams he played on should have won more NFC championship games or Super Bowls, or if those were in fact teams carried as far as they were because of his greatness. Now, the late season failures that we have seen for the last 12 years, in my estimation, do diminish greatly the way that you can historically look back at Aaron Rodgers. And one of the conversations I've had with other Packer fans recently is this: when they want to put him in the top 5, top 4, the pantheon of greatest quarterbacks of all time, I have to pour cold water on that. He just hasn't won enough. He just has not won enough. Patrick Mahomes gets an elevated spot above Rodgers because he's been to 2 Super Bowls and won 1. Rodgers has been to the same number of Super Bowls as Rex Grossman. He's been to the same number of Super Bowls as Matt Stafford. And he hasn't done anything of significance, fellas and ladies, for 12, 13 years now. And when you see him not beat a 49er team that threw the ball 8 times, what are you supposed to say about this? You're not taking yards when you've got him in front of you in 2 separate occasions in big spots. We started off the show talking shit about Kirk Cousins. Well, Rodgers hasn't played much better, at least when it comes to big spot, big game production. Yes, he's a fantastic, and this is my new narrative for Rodgers, a fantastic regular season divisional quarterback against the NFC North in the regular season. He owns the Bears. Oh, congratulations. What an accomplishment. That's great. Like Bill Belichick owned the Bills when they had, I don't know, like some ass clown from Florida State playing quarterback. Like, that's not an accomplishment. Oh, I own you. Okay. All right, fine. This is just going to look so bad for the Packers. You're right. If he steps away, I mean, if I were Brian Gutekunst, I might actually retire too, because I'm like, well, that's it for me. Thing up.
Again, you can't put anything past this guy. You never know what this guy's thinking. And I think I would have I can't say that. I was going to say a normal person's not going to walk away from $60 million, but he's not normal.
No,
so.
He's got the money and he got the bag. And look, from a business perspective, congratulations. Like, I'm sure Aaron and his financial advisors right now are very excited about the way this has worked out. Oh, dude, you don't even need to put another year of wear and tear on your body, and we've got all this money. I mean, great job. If you're a football fan, a Packer fan, you're feeling pretty pissed about it. Hey, NBA basketball starts today at noon, Chad. NBA TV, Boston and Charlotte. Okay, 10 o'clock for you. Play a little hooky, put it up on your computer. TNT, 2:30, Miami at Atlanta. TNT later tonight, Phoenix and Memphis. The Lakers in Houston will play 9:30 on NBA TV. And the Milwaukee Bucks, they'll be at Bally's Sports Plus, or Bally's Sports here in the state of Wisconsin, are hosting the Indiana Pacers at 1:30. Tomorrow on the program, we'll talk to Matt Janis, UWL head football coach. We'll talk about tonight's Monday Night Football game, the Buccaneers and the Cowboys. I like Tampa in this one, plus 2.5. And we'll see what the NBA slate did, including the Bucs, who are trying to snap a 2-game losing streak. They've lost twice in a row to the Heat. So we'll see if they can't bounce back versus the Pacers. Chad, have a great rest of your Monday. Fun stuff.
You do.
Thanks to Joe Daguanno. See you guys.